My name is Dr. David Michael Smith, and I'm a member of the Houston United Front Against Fascism. The anti-fascist movement is pretty diverse. A lot of attention's been paid to some of the younger folks that dress in black and, often are anarchists or anarcho-socialists. Houston United Front Against Fascism has a little bit different approach. Some of us come from communist and socialist backgrounds. Others are just genuinely progressive folks on the left, but we do like working with everybody, including the so-called Antifa Black Bloc, in fighting against fascism and Trumpsterism. Our organization was formed to oppose the Trump movement, neo-Nazis, other fascists that have taken to the streets of greater Houston over the last several years. So we sponsor militant but nonviolent protest. We educate people about the threat posed by the far right, and we're glad to have played a role in the defeat of Trump nationally. They're contributing here in Houston, but also nationally, to the spike in homicides. And that's what I would call a growing legitimacy of our police agencies in the United States. In the wake of the murder of George Floyd, you had massive protests. More than 15 million people protested in the summer of 2020. And even though that did not produce a lot of police reforms, it has had an effect in the communities across this country. A lot of young people who might be inclined to commit potentially violent crimes are now asking, well, if the cops don't have to obey the law, why should I? And this is a huge problem. Everybody agrees that violent crime is a problem. There's no disagreement about that. But our elected officials and politicians need to hear from the community that not all of us want more cops or harsher policing. We need to get at the root causes of the problem. We need to tackle poverty, racism, economic inequality, and all the rest. So look, I'm not an anarchist, I'm a communist. I definitely believe in having law enforcement in whatever kind of society you want, but you've got to have law enforcement that's answerable and accountable to the communities. We need democratic community control of the police in our country. Our country, not just Houston, has always had a huge homicide problem. Social scientists all know that we have the most violent kind of society, the highest homicide rate of any of the advanced capitalist countries, and it has gotten worse in the last 2 years. If you look at statistics from the Centers for Disease Control and Department of Justice in Washington, we know that the spike in homicides has occurred in part because of COVID. COVID's had a lot of really bad effects on people, psychologically, financially, and so forth. So that's part of it. Another part in Houston that's peculiar to Houston is that we have a terribly backlogged court problem. Basically we had Hurricane Harvey in 2017 and then COVID over the last couple of years, and that combination has led to, check this out, about 100,000 cases that have not been heard yet, and some of which involve people who are still out on the streets and able to commit crimes again. So I think that when you look at COVID in Houston, the backlog of court cases, and this legitimation crisis for the police, I think those explain the most recent spikes.